Okay, let's jump right into this. The United States economy absolutely does not exist in a vacuum. I mean, it's a piece of this massive, living, breathing global web. So today, in this explainer, we're diving into the two most powerful and honestly the most misunderstood forces moving across that web: human labor and financial capital. When you take a step back and look at the big macroeconomic picture, you quickly realize that while borders might define countries, money and talent, they're constantly flowing right across them. And as we'll see, that constant movement is exactly what fuels economic expansion. It's really easy to look at the world as a zero-sum game. We hear it all the time, right? If someone else gets a job or if a factory moves overseas, someone here automatically loses. It kind of feels like common sense. But actually, no. We are going to use some core economic principles, specifically looking at supply and demand, to reveal some deeply counterintuitive realities about global mobility. Once we trace how capital and labor actually move, you'll see how this global interconnectedness completely transforms the domestic economy for the better. Here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll cover the global economic flow, the labor mobility myth, the brain drain advantage, capitalists seeking returns, stabilizing domestic interest rates, and finally, open markets versus command. Let's start with Part 1, the global economic flow. Moving on to Part 2, the labor mobility myth. Economist Benjamin Powell hits the nail on the head here regarding a massive blind spot in how we typically view immigration. If you're only looking at one side of the equation, just the supply side, it is incredibly easy to assume that more workers mathematically equals cheaper labor. That's why the zero-sum myth just won't die. But humans aren't just gears in a machine. They are active participants in the economy. Yes, they bring their hands to work, but they also bring their appetites, their needs, and crucially, their purchasing power. Think about it like this. When new workers arrive, sure, the labor supply increases, but the very next day, they need a place to live. They rent apartments, buy groceries, get cell phone plans, buy clothes. This immediately injects a massive wave of new consumer demand right into the market. And to meet that sudden surge, local businesses have to expand. The grocery store suddenly needs more cashiers, the construction company has to build more apartments, the cell phone provider needs more technicians. The pie doesn't get sliced thinner, the whole pie literally gets bigger, because those new workers are simultaneously fueling the demand side of the equation. Which brings us to Part 3, the brain drain advantage. So let's look at a real-world case study of the incredible advantage of importing global talent. Say the economy rapidly shifts, like we're seeing right now with advanced artificial intelligence or biotech. Local workers face structural unemployment and need years of retraining to catch up. It's a slow process. But through what's known as the brain drain, the U.S. can bypass that waiting period entirely. Take Silicon Valley. Instead of waiting a decade to train local workers from scratch in highly specialized machine learning, U.S. tech firms simply import top-tier talent from Europe or Asia. The U.S. immediately absorbs that high-value human capital, while the home countries bear the entire cost of their earlier education. It's a massive, immediate structural boost to our domestic innovation. And this imported talent, it is absolute fuel for our modern service economy. Just to put this in perspective, right? Right now, unemployment for workers with a bachelor's degree or higher is hovering at a tiny 2.7%. Contrast that with nearly 9% for folks without a high school diploma. The U.S. has transitioned into a highly diversified, high-skilled economy that heavily rewards specialized knowledge. Bringing in the best and brightest from around the world directly feeds this high-productivity engine, keeping the United States at the absolute bleeding edge of global technology. All right, Part 4, capital-seeking returns. Just like labor moves to find better opportunities, capital is relentless. It flows strictly to where it can be most productive. Firms are constantly using marginal analysis to weigh the exact costs and benefits of every single move. Think about the opportunity cost here. Having an American worker sew a basic t-shirt, the opportunity cost is just way too high when that exact same human capital could be engineering software or developing advanced pharmaceuticals. So capital for basic, low-skill manufacturing naturally flows to places like Bangladesh or Vietnam, where it's vastly more efficient. Meanwhile, the U.S. intensely concentrates its domestic capital into high-value, complex industries. It's all about maximizing returns across the board. Now let's look at Part 5, stabilizing domestic interest rates. Beyond corporate manufacturing, this global flow of money actually gets incredibly personal. When foreign entities sell us goods, what do they do with those earnings? They turn right around and buy American financial assets, things like treasury bonds or corporate stocks. This effectively pumps their savings directly back into the U.S. economy, which vastly increases our supply of loanable funds. The beauty of this system is that it acts as a massive shock absorber. Just following the laws of supply and demand, this huge influx of foreign capital helps stabilize our domestic interest rates. It keeps the cost of borrowing remarkably steady and manageable, even when we hit sudden market fluctuations or domestic economic speed bumps. And this equation right here, this is the ultimate engine of economic growth. Because foreign savings keep borrowing costs low, U.S. firms can easily finance huge domestic investments. When money is cheap to borrow, companies build state-of-the-art factories. They pour money into research and development, and they upgrade their technology. This process is called capital deepening. Essentially, it gives American workers way better tools to work with, making them exponentially more productive. And at the end of the day, higher productivity is the fundamental driver of higher wages and better living standards over the long run. Finally, let's wrap up with part 6, open markets versus command. Let's escalate to the global macroeconomic picture and compare these systems. In a top-down command economy, centralized planners are basically trying to play chess with the market. They build capital controls and border walls to trap money and labor, dictating exactly where resources should go. But an open market, that operates bottom-up. It relies entirely on the invisible hand. Millions of individual people and businesses freely moving their time and their money organically leads to the most incredibly efficient use of global resources. It creates a dynamic, fluid system that rewards actual innovation rather than just political favoritism. Restrictive systems that try to protect themselves by limiting these flows, well, they usually just end up isolating themselves from growth and totally stifling their own potential. Now, yes, embracing open mobility means inviting global competition. But that very competition keeps prices low for you and me. It subdues domestic inflation. And when old, inefficient industries inevitably die out, what economist Joseph Schumpeter famously called creative destruction, the free flow of global talent and money ensures that the next big, innovative industry can immediately rise from the ashes. You're never stuck artificially propping up yesterday's technology. So, we've seen that global mobility isn't a threat at all. It's the absolute fuel for expansion. Foreign workers drive massive new demand, and foreign capital finances our innovation. The economic pie isn't fixed. It is constantly, rapidly growing. So, as you look at your own career and your own skills, you have to ask yourself, in a world where talent and money flow faster than ever before, is your human capital a globally traded asset or a localized liability? Keep adapting, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next explainer.